be a United States District Judge. There are no, quote, public access systems, unquote. There are cable TV systems. The cable TV system has a public access channel, if it complies with the law, federal, state, and municipal, which Dolan rarely does. This is an ignorant paper. Law clerk, first job out of law school, quote, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Infer is not germane to the instant lawsuit. Jackson writes, this lawsuit isn't about Cablevision taking a chat with Glendora off of the TV 7 years ago. It's about the public access rules that they came up with that were illegal, that were anti-American, and that were imperial or imperialistic. Which, frankly? Imperious. Imperious is best. Right? Yeah. Thereafter, plaintiff Glendora filed a number of lawsuits in the United States District Court for the Southern and Northern Districts of New York against Cablevision, its employees, agents, lawyers, and officers. I didn't catch this. I didn't file one in the Northern District of New York. The Northern District of New York is Albany. I did not file a lawsuit about Cablevision in Albany. This is an ignorant paper. This is Callagy talk. Callagy is a co-defendant. Court has obviously gone ex parte. Money talks. Jackson was improperly influenced, biased and prejudiced, and should have recused by law. And the law is Title 28, the United States Code, 144 and 454, the sections. Jackson says, the court will not recite in detail the entire legal history as it relates to the parties. Why should they? That history has been fully discussed in the decisions of the various courts involved, and they were all crooked, except one, in other claims filed by Glendora against the same defendants. That is wrong. Maurice Cunningham was not the same defendant. Texaco was not the same defendant. Brian McNeil was not a defendant. See Glendora versus Board of Directors of Cablevision. January 20, 1998. Exhibit B of Group 1 Defendant's Motion to Dismiss. That was a crooked decision by Aileen Ross, who is a very bad person and who's totally qualified, like Jackson, to be a judge. The boy judges were bad enough. The girl judges are just as bad. A, well, why should it? B, confine yourselves to the issues in the instant lawsuit. C, shame on you for even mentioning the previous law-breaking of Dolan, Cablevision, and their paid accomplices. D, Exhibit B is another judge who got paid, Charles L. Bryant. Bryant got paid to get rid of Dolan paid him to get rid of the Dolan having to come to court, face the jury, and face Glendora's questioning, which is the American way. So Dolan, being the coward that he is, and being an un-American that he is, ran the other way and paid Bryant, and Bryant dismissed the case. I think maybe you ought to go into the business of being a judge and make a lot of money. These dismissals must come at a very high price. I gave him my bed. The bed I made for him wasn't big enough. And finally he went to sleep. I had to take a break from this another dismal federal court, St. Louis. There's so much you can take at a time. And we had breakfast. It was good. We always start with nuts, very high protein. like working with Cablevision. You start with nuts. And then we had a cereal bar. Quaker cereal bars are very expensive, but boy, they really are superior. Pat and Mark are good too, and they're less expensive, about $1 less. I wasn't going to say anything, but Franklin noticed the difference, so. And then we had maple. And I gave the maple one more chance. At first I didn't like it, but that's the way Franklin cooks it. So I said, I'll give it one more chance, and I followed the directions very closely, and it's quite good. Maple oatmeal. I wanted maple wheat cereal, but Seatown didn't have it. Then what did we have? Peanut butter sandwiches, because peanut butter is so high in protein. And people in Franklin's family get myeloma. And what is myeloma? It's the red corpuscles eating the white, or the white eating the red, or something. It's in the bone marrow. So we make sure that Franklin gets a lot of protein. First-hand protein. If you eat meat, you're getting your protein second-hand. And then what? And Franklin had orange juice. Worst cold I've ever seen him have. But he's getting rid of it. That was it. I had the piece of leftover pumpkin pie. And that was it. And then you pray a little, and then you have a little more strength to continue standing up for America and protecting America against its courts. You know, these courts belong to you, the people. When you go to court, you'll find out that your courts have been stolen. We're on page 11. It says, Jackson, the lawsuits arose from identical facts and presented the same claims, including defendants' alleged violations of the First Amendment, violation of federal statutes pertaining to cable television, tort claims, breach of contract. And Glendora says, oh, wait a minute. This is all Callaghy talk. You are not even clever enough to paraphrase. You use his exact words. They all had to be included again as a claim because they have never been adjudicated on their merits, and Glendora has never received relief. When not adjudicated on the merits, claims can be brought again. This court, quote unquote, should know that. Because plaintiff had no money, Glendora says, to pay, you deal only with the crook's papers submitted. Moving on to page 12. Run-on sentence. You get an F on this alone. Your paper flunks. Where did clerk go to law school? Or even, where did clerk take 10th grade English? Burness is a good pro se. He beat a gang of condominium crooks in Manhattan. That was with Wexler in the Eastern District of New York in 1999. Anyway, what is the law? Clerk's point. Burness should have sent a copy to all parties. Glendora never saw the Burness letter to the court. Now Glendora attacks Jackson, page 3. Claims, says Jackson, and shareholder derivative claims. Plaintiff Glendora has also filed lawsuits in the federal courts in the District of Columbia, the Southern District of Texas, and the Central District of California. She's left out a few. She missed Detroit. She missed Philadelphia. She missed Washington, D.C. She missed Alabama. She missed Little Rock. A, Glendora says, what law does this break? B, what bearing does this have on the instant case? C, one can see what papers were read. Only the defendant's side was seen. D, is it not obvious who paid and who was paid? They'll have to stand on their heads. His paper was inserted upside down, this page. What does this have to do with the other plaintiff's pursuit of justice? Shame on you, court, quote unquote. Jackson writes, or her freshman law clerk writes, all of the claims asserted in these cases have been dismissed based on res judicata and for failure to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. And Glendora says, you prove this. You prove this res judicata. This is not so. And you prove the failure to state a claim. Glendora stated a claim, but the paid judges did not state all the relief just and proper. This is rampant bias and prejudice, and Jackson broke the law in not recusing. And what law is she breaking? U.S. Code Title 28, Section 2, Section 144 and 454. Says Jackson, in the instant case, plaintiffs assert that the Group 1 defendants have implemented changes to their public access program in violation of plaintiffs' First Amendment rights. The claims against the Group 1 defendants include a variety of harms related to the production of their cable television programs. Plaintiffs allege that the Group 2 defendants have prevented them from inspecting the books, records, and board minutes, it's the minutes, of Texaco, and from obtaining documents reflecting the residence addresses of the corporation's officers and directors, all in violation of the New York Business Corporation Law. Plaintiff Glendora alleges that her rights as a Texaco shareholder were violated by the refusal of Texaco's directors to respond to all of the questions she submitted to them at the company's annual meeting. Glendora said, you did all right up until here. And now Jackson goes on, Plaintiff Glendora further alleges that the Group 1 and Group 2 defendants are liable under the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, Title 18 U.S. Code, Section 1961, et sec, as, quote, extortionists, unquote, because Texaco charges consumers $2 per gallon for gasoline. Glendora says, you have this all wrong. If everything else fails, why don't you try reading the complaint? Cablevision does not charge $2 a gallon for gasoline. But then, who knows but what Charles Dolan tomorrow might buy Chevron. Jackson's page 4. Federal district courts have the discretion to dismiss a case where venue is improper. 28 U.S. Code, Section 1406. That's the wrong law. Dismissal is appropriate where plaintiffs evidence bad faith in filing in an improper form, where plaintiffs knowingly file in an improper district, or where dismissal is in the interest of justice. And they quote, another bad decision by another bad judge. So forget it. Don't even think about it. Now, we are up to page 15. Glendora says, plaintiffs did not evidence bad faith. Defendants in the court did. Section 1406 is the wrong site. The correct site is Section 1404. 1606 is for a transfer within a district, like if you're transferring a case from Manhattan to White Plains. But 1404 deals with transfer, not venue. Venue is a different section. The forum is proper. Look at all the money this filing brought into the St. Louis political machine. Plaintiffs did not knowingly file in an improper forum. There was a chance there might be a patriot on the bench of the United States District Court, St. Louis. A chance about this big. Dismissal, Glendora says, is not in the interest of justice, only in the interest of money. Says Jackson, the New York Supreme Court has sanctioned and prohibited plaintiff Glendora from filing claims that involve the same issues present in the instant case. Glendora versus Board of Directors of Cablevision is that's the de Blasio case, attached as Group 1 Defendant Exhibit B. The Second Circuit has also sanctioned and prohibited Glendora from bringing any action related to the cases at hand absent leave of court. Glendora versus Marshall. Well, Glendora says there is no such order valid about the New York Supreme Court. John P. de Blasio was caught cheating again. Glendora caught him cheating. Then Gannett caught him cheating. Can you see this? There you are. That's de Blasio walking out of the Connecticut School of Broadcasting 31 mornings instead of being in the courtroom. De Blasio spends time in the TV class, not in court. De Blasio is another judge that Dolan bought. Of my knowledge, personal knowledge, Dolan has brought quite a few judges. He bought Bryant, he bought de Blasio, and he bought Jackson. We are on page 17. Glendora says there never was an order that Glendora was sanctioned in the Second Circuit. If you think so, then produce the order, signed by a judge, nay, by 3 judges. You cannot. Glendora explained this to you carefully, but in your bias, prejudice, and payment, you don't tell the truth. You are acting in bad faith. Glendora says, so you argue Glendora's case for her. If she can't bring her cases in state court or in federal court in her own district, then she has to go out of state. Thank you. This law clerk is an amateur compared with New York law clerks. He needs more corruption before he can grow up to be a New York judge. He isn't corrupt enough yet to grow up to be a New York judge. He needs more training in corruption, in lying and stealing and cheating. Notwithstanding the warnings from these courts, Glendora has brought actions involving issues that are the same as those previously litigated in the District of Columbia, California, Texas, and now in Missouri. I don't remember these being litigated in District of Columbia, nor in California, nor in Texas. And Glendora says, and now what is your point? That's plain inaccurate. The case in California was cable systems refusing to cablecast non-resident public access programs. That has nothing to do with the cause of action in this case. The case in Texas had to do with Mark D. Fox, who is a crook, a United States magistrate from Rockland County who went to Albany Law School. Mark D. Fox. And he never should have been reappointed magistrate, and he wouldn't have been if the public had been given time to protest him, and if they hadn't cheated and appointed him before his appointment was up. In other words, if they hadn't pulled a fast one. And all of the people who did appoint him, they were brought as defendants, and a whole lot of other crooked judges and magistrates and crooked law clerks. And then the non-court crooks, like cable operators, like garage maintenance people. You need only Callaghan's papers. You read only Callaghan's paper, Glendora says. You are biased. You are prejudiced. You broke the law. 28 United States Code, sections 144 and 454. Maybe Glendora can get Jackson impeached. I think you could, for traitorship to the United States of America. You can only impeach a federal judge on treason. Well, that's treason. Suing Jackson will will dissolve the dream of the Supreme. If she gets sued, I don't think she'll ever make it to the Supreme Court of the United States. Says Jackson, plaintiffs has filed this complaint against a number of defendants claiming various violations of state and federal law to the extent that it is comprehensible. And I think they meant to say incomprehensible. And Glendora says it's incomprehensible only to those sans intelligence. Jackson says the complaint appears to arise out of the same events that were litigated in and dismissed by the federal court in New York, California, Texaco, and the District of Columbia. Okay, let me correct that. The California court was about not cable casting non-resident programs. That's never been before the Missouri court. The case in Texas was about Mark D. Fox. That has never been before the Missouri court. And the cases in the District of Columbia were not, they certainly weren't about shareholder, because those went to Boston, and Boston didn't file them, and then Boston filed cases that I didn't submit. So you see, Jackson is lying here. Even if this were so, and it is not, and it's stupid to say such a thing, unlearned, unread, uninformed, a claim can be brought until it is adjudicated on its merits. How is it you don't know this? If a court doesn't adjudicate your case on its merits, then you bring it again. And if you keep going to court the way I did to show up these crooked judges, then eventually, very soon, you will be a poor person, and then you won't have to pay any fees. Glendora said, who said it did? This is a non-issue. Some of the defendants are residents of Missouri. None of the defendants, rather, are residents of Missouri. Glendora says none, quote unquote, is singular. It requires a singular verb, is. Go back to 10th grade. Jackson writes, therefore, neither personal jurisdiction nor venue is proper here, and Glendora says, you are wrong. Read Moore's federal practice. Here is a hope. You read better than you write. And Jackson says, for those of you tuned in, like Jackson is a crooked judge, corrupt judge in the United States District Court of St. Louis. Jackson says, the complaint does not state a cause of action upon which relief can be granted. Glendora says, this is mere dictum. It is noticeable that you flee from substantiating this. Plaintiff demands that the court substantiate this dictum, both factually and legally. You are in error. You abuse discretion. You fail as an Article III judge. Now we're up to page 20, and let's take a break from this filth. But I'm glad that the record is being set straight. It's 12:12 p.m. That's a magic minute. What is a magic minute? Well, 1:11 is a magic minute, right? 2:22 is a magic minute. 3:33 is a magic minute. 4:44. There are no magic minutes in the hour of 5. Yes, there would be. 5:55. That's right, 5:55. There are no magic minutes in the hour 6, and in the hour 7, and in the hour 8, in the hour 9, in the hour 10. Unless 10:10 is a magic minute, 11:11 is a magic minute, 12:12 is a magic minute maybe. So what do you do on a magic minute? You take time to think about God, and you take time to think about all the good things that you have. And you take time to think about, what is God why is God so good to us? Why does God give us such a beautiful earth? Why does God give us so many good things? Why does God give us so much beauty, so many colors, and music, which goes straight to your soul, and a sense of humor? Do you ever stop and think what makes you laugh? Sometimes when you're surprised, or there's a sudden twist, you laugh, if it isn't injurious. Or you laugh at sometimes at exaggeration. Puns. Puns are wonderful. They make you laugh. You never laugh when anybody's injured or hurt or insulted. Anyway, that's what a magic minute is. So it's 12:12 p.m. Franklin is just about to go serve this corrupt Judge Jackson. So this is a Rule 60B motion for her for relief from her stupid order and her paid-for order. But she isn't person enough, and of course she can't give back the money. She has to pay up. Dolan's already given them the money, so she has to pay up. This is payment day. And so it'll end up appealing. Try that out. I don't know what circuit they are in. And then, of course, that will be crooked too. But then you just sue, and then you get another crooked court, and so on it goes. But it's the only thing you have, okay? And every time you do it, you break them down a little bit. You chip them down a little bit. Franklin's calling MCI. They get everything mixed up too.
Thank you for calling MCI WorldCom. Our offices are now closed. Office hours are Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Central Time. Please call back during normal business hours or press any key on your touch-tone phone to leave a message. Thank you for calling MCI WorldCom.
Go ahead. Leave a message, please.
Please leave your name, telephone number, and account number at the sound of the tone. An account representative will return your call as soon as possible. When you are finished with your message, please press the pound key.
This is Franklin Buell. Account number, in October, we received the notice that we owed you $112.81, and we sent you check 850 for that amount on the 30th of October. Then in November, dated the 15th, you sent another notice that we owed you $112.81. So this call is to let you know that that seems to be a duplication because it's been paid. Our number is 914-949-9495.
And another thing too is that I thought the charge was going to be $651, but you've got it back in our other two phone numbers. You've got it back to more than it was with Crazy Bell. And I think I was misled on that. I was never given the total charge of what the phone bill would be in Huntington. That number is 631-425-0304. And it was only about $14 with Bell, and you've got it way up to 17 or 18. And the same applies to the number that Franklin just gave you. So I can't see the switching to MCI was the savings. In fact, I think it's more. You want to call up and explain that too. This is Glendora. Is there anything else?
No.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, folks, I just went out with Franklin and we boosted the 1993 Lincoln. That's the reason you have two Lincolns, so you'll have one to boost the other one. And the 1980 boosted the 1993. So I think that we got to take the 1993 up and have the battery charged. And maybe we will get the interstate battery that Frank Massarelli over in New Rochelle at the corner of North Avenue and Union Street. He should have given us a warranty. When he put in a new interstate battery, he should never have charged us. He just should have taken the old one. But he didn't do that. And this half of, this is Franklin's validating, this half fell down way down. Franklin just gave you. So I can't see the switching to MCI was the savings. In fact, I think it's more. You want to call up and explain that too. This is Glendora. Is there anything else?
No.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, folks, I just went out with Franklin and we boosted the 1993 Lincoln. That's the reason you have two Lincolns, so you'll have one to boost the other one. And the 1980 boosted the 1993. So I think that we got to take the 1993 up and have the battery charged. And maybe we will get the interstate battery that Frank Massarelli over in New Rochelle at the corner of North Avenue and Union Street. He should have given us a warranty. When he put in a new interstate battery, he should never have charged us. He just should have taken the old one. But he didn't do that, and he was called on that by myself and by Rick Futia, both Ricks Futia. So we left the battery, the brand new interstate, with Rick Futia for him to sell it, but it's been over a year and I haven't heard that he sold it. So we just take it back. And then sometimes the 1993 will start if you knock the negative terminal or the positive terminal. And I used my valet key to do that, and that was a mistake. the valet key fell apart, and this half of, this is Franklin's valet key, and this half fell down, way down between the battery and the wall, and I can't get it. So Franklin has gone to serve Jackson. Franklin and Rusty have gone together and to serve the Civil RICO seatbelt in Lake Failure. Okay, we are reading this horrible Jackson order that she got paid for, the party got paid for. And Jackson says, a claim is frivolous where it lacks an arguable basis. And so Glendora says, what is frivolous, quote unquote, is this order, this so-called order. But this court, quote unquote, is indisputably biased, prejudiced, and bought. Jackson says, although pro se complaints are to be liberally construed, this complaint is clearly frivolous and has been filed in bad faith. And Glendora says, the court, it is the court who has acted frivolously and who is in bad faith. And this is just the document Glendora needs to sue you under Title 42 U.S. Code, Section 1983, violation of civil rights under color of state, and no judge is immune. This was the big battle after the Civil War. Are judges immune from civil rights cases? They fought it and fought it and fought it, and they lost. They are not immune. And also under color of state, that is under color of state, and also under 1985, which is conspiracy. They conspired against us. Texaco, Dolans, Price, Kuhlman, and co-defendant Callaghan, and co-defendant Satterley. And what did you do about this? Glendora asks. Meaning this. This is the big case that Glendora won in the Second Circuit. Okay? On January 11th, 1995, however, in view of the well-settled rule, particularly applicable in pro se civil rights actions, that a complaint should not be dismissed unless it appears beyond doubt that the plaintiff can prove no set of facts in support of her claim which would entitle her to relief. That's an order from the United States Court of Appeals, Second Circuit. And this crazy Jackson, greedy grit Jackson, ignore it. Says Glendora, your fugitivism from this is glaring. You robbed Glendora of due process. You stole her right to prove beyond a doubt, and this is a poor excuse for a federal court. Says Jackson, complaint will be dismissed. Glendora says, you are the one who must be dismissed. Says Jackson, accordingly, it is hereby ordered that defendants' separate motion to dismiss are granted. Isn't this a dumb order? Carol E. Jackson, United States District Court. The boy judges were bad enough. The girl judges are worse. Dated the 17th day of November, 2000, and that's exactly 1 week ago yesterday. It came in on Thanksgiving Eve. Her timing is perfect. Ruined Thanksgiving. I worked on it Thanksgiving Eve, I worked on it Thanksgiving, and I worked on it Friday all day. And I worked on it today up until 1 o'clock. Glendora says you never even mentioned Texaco. You did not deal with sanctions. Rule 11. Your offenses against the people's courts are more egregious, Glendora says, than Price and Kuhlman. Callaghan should be disbarred for defending co-defendants. And Glendora says, America weeps. How this court has betrayed the USA. Again, shame on you. Shame on you, Carol E. Jackson. E for evil. Glendora says, so if you do not have venue, why do you think you have jurisdiction? Says Glendora, Glendora demands an affidavit that you have jurisdiction and proof thereof. Remember, you have no jurisdiction because you did not rule on number 1, IFP, informer populace, four-person. Glendora is not from Missouri. She has to be shown. Now what does this mean? United States District Court, Eastern Missouri, internal record keeping. An order, judgment, or endorsement was scanned, faxed, I say it was fixed, and or mailed to the following individuals on 11/17 by KSTERRET. The case number is 4 Civ 754, Galgano versus Dolan. 28, 1331, federal question, other civil rights. Warren Davis, who is that? Fax 314. See, they fax it. They should send it the same way to everybody. They can't fax it to some people and do it by snail mail to other people. It was faxed to Lori Galgano and to unknown Glendora. What is that? Dumb court, dumb court. And to Richard Kuhlman, but it doesn't say to Price. What does unknown Glendora mean? Glendora asks. Glendora says, Glendora is unknown. This so-called order is invalid. It is a nullity. Default judgment, says Glendora. How can you ignore default judgment? Here is another law you broke. Rule 55, Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. The case against this court is very strong. Not the designated address. You do not use Glendora's designated address. And then they say the case number in 7 pages. And Glendora asks, how many dollars did each page bring? How many dollars per page? And speaking of frivolous orders, Glendora presents infra of the most puerile yet. And this is Jackson's order that I never read to you, but I told you about it, saying that Glendora cannot write interlinears, that is, between the lines, and that Glendora cannot write in the margin, and that Glendora is titling the papers wrong. Well, that is not so. The titles of the paper are correct. And so this is such a childish order that I want it in the record so they can see what a bad decision Jackson made. Now we are up to page 28. Glendora does not have time to spend on this trivia, but quickly, here are a few failures with it. Rank violation of First Amendment, Gestapoism, imperialism, bias, prejudice, bought, sold, afraid of words, afraid of work, dereliction, wrong. Glendora carefully titled all papers. Glendora knows the value of full titles. This is what shows in the docket. Apostasy, trivial. Jackson has 2 motions for summary judgment, Rule 56, and 2 motions for default judgment, Rule 55, and she spends our time on this nonsense. Threatening to dismiss is despotic. Jackson is not qualified as an Article III judge. Her job is to uphold the Constitution. She fails. Looking for an excuse. Trying to rile Glendora into a fight. Anticlimax. Taxpayer waste. Failure to defend, Glendora says. Jackson does nothing about defendants Dolan threw saddle. Failure to defend. She misses the drift of the entire action. The intellect is wasted on this court quote unquote, but not on future generations. It is there for them to see, unless somebody pulls a Title 18 U.S. Criminal Code, Section 227.01, which is tampering with the records. Now here's what this paper cost. It cost 11 hours, and it cost $60.70. The total number of hours on Dolan law breaking for 7 years is 3,172 hours. And that's times $250 an hour. That's for the old people. Starting November 1st, the rate went up to $300 an hour. And $14,994.90 in print, post, and travel. Now here's what Galgano versus James L. Dolan has cost. 1,023.25 hours and $2,514.24. Now, we have 1,365 lies by Cablevision, Dolan's, the lawyers, and the judges. We have 23,718 pages. We have 64 volumes, 576 mailings, 6 file drawers, 406 TV reports. From November the 11th, Veterans Day, 1993, to November the 24th, today, year 2000, is 3 years, 2 weeks of Dolan betrayal to America. Following is a list of the laws, constitutional and statutory, that Jackson violated and upon which she will be sued. Section 1983, violation of civil rights under color of state. Section 1985, conspiracy. Section 144, refuse to recuse. Section 454, ibid. Section 372, 1C, conduct prejudicial to the effective administration of the business of the courts, which business is justice. These are all violations by Carol E. Jackson. First Amendment, free speech, right to petition the government for redress of wrong, right to peaceful assembly, and the public's right to know and see and hear. You see, I have a right to free speech, but you have a right to hear it. That's part of the First Amendment, too. You have a right to know. Fifth Amendment, due process. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 1, just, speedy, and inexpensive. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 26 to 37, discovery. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 38, jury trial. And a failure to rule on the merits, obstruction of justice, abuse of office, apostasy, cheating Americans, selling the public short, traitorship to the USA, and right to be a pro se. And also she violated the 14th Amendment, which is equal protection of the law. In addition to that, she violated my rights under the Constitution of the State of New York, the Bill of Rights. And we are up to page 31. Okay, after a little break, let's go on. Says Glendora on Thanksgiving, this is a fix. It is rigged. It is another smothered United States District Judge with no functional autonomy. That means she can't speak for herself. And she took so long. Glendora poured her heart out for justice, and Jackson comes up with a hack paper. She does not serve all parties, and that's the law. And here is another traitor, ship to America. Add Jackson to the who to sue list. I already have. The omnibus lawsuit. I have to do a half hour on that today and a half hour for yesterday. Didn't get to it because of Jackson. Add her name to the graphics on TV of bad judges. It is just another heck. Kuhlman and Price, with their low-class papers, augured the same. They knew they had a cheat Jackson would succumb to. It's really through Callaghan, sadly Stephen Burke and Dolan. Glendora wants an affidavit from Jackson that she was not improperly influenced by money to the party. The lawsuit had its effect. It stopped Cablevision, illegal public access rules, and it got rid of Bijur. Bijur lost Texaco. I don't think a lawsuit could be much more successful than that. Dolan buys another judge. And how do you spell Dolan? D-O-U-G-H-L-A-N. Under the gangsters, next tamper with the record, Title 18 U.S. Code Criminal 2701. The facts are there for generations to come. Check to see if what they send to Kansas City is skeletal shell. You see, Kansas City is where the archives go, where the lawsuits go, which is stupid because you have to go to Kansas City to see a case. Is Jackson going to publish the simpleton order, quote unquote? And remember this, New York beat St. Louis. Glendora still prays to St. Louis. He is as upset with his so-called court as she is. It was the well-pleaded complaint. It wasn't an abominable, quote-unquote, order, paid for and executed. Jackson has no standing. Jackson has no jurisdiction. She did not rule on any form of papyrus. Little guys in Jackson court amount to nothing. These are the courts that belong to the people. But the gang stole the courts from the people. This has hampered repeatedly. This has happened repeatedly. Whenever Glendora corners Cablevision in the court, he gets out the money and he buys the court. That's the way he buys everything else that he can. The longer they wait for dismissal, the more Dolan has to pay. Price replied to Glendora's omnibus motion is a farce, but it is only a token. And paying judges is cheaper for Dolan than paying law firms, really. You can get a judge more cheaply than you can a law firm. Glendora plays fairly and squarely. Dolan, Texaco, Jackson, and the party did not. This is not the first holy day that Dolan law-breaking has ruined. Glendora is thankful on Thanksgiving that it happened to us because we have a medium to expose it. You are our medium. Jackson would not have been appointed a United States District Judge if she had not made the promises. And now it is time to pay up. We are called again to serve. Said Samuel, Lord, send me. The important thing is that we know, and they know we know. The important thing is that we know, and they know we know. To which I would add, we let you know. All the obvious defects in Price and Kuhlman, ghostwritten by Callaghan, were glossed over by Jackson. Well, the hard work was worth it. Glendora has caught another one red-handed. Over and over, it's one sleaze quoting another. Reserved. Under penalty of perjury, Glendora has told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and always has, so help her God. Defendants in the court have not. Wherefore, plaintiff Glendora seeks relief from order, together with all other relief sought in all of her papers, the cost of this motion, and all further relief just and proper. Dated White Plains, New York, Thanksgiving Day 2000, yours in truth, Glendora. Chat with Glendora, Box 416, White Plains, New York, 10602. And here's the log I kept by the day and by the half hour. I planned my whole life around it over Thanksgiving. I did a half hour of Jackson, then a half an hour of my other life, or my rest of my life. Half hour of Jackson, a half hour of my life, and so forth, until I got it done, and it was done this morning at, well, it was done printed, and then it had to be collated, and then you saw what Franklin was doing, putting the names at the top of the page and stuffing the envelopes. I did the envelopes, their address and return address, and now Franklin is serving it. And the time is 1:40 p.m. And here's the affirmation of service. Remember good old de Blasi, the cheater judge, okay? Remember him, John P. de Blasi? Go see him in the court. Go watch him. Supreme Court. I think it's across the street on Grand Street, across from the old post office in White Plains. I think they moved him out of the mainstream. So Glendora caught him cheating and how, and read that to you page after page after page after page, maybe 500 pages. And then de Blasi was caught by Gannett cheating by going to the Connecticut Broadcasting School to learn to be a TV host. And so just remember de Blasi. How much do you want to pay for your funeral? You better tell somebody before you die, or all of your money's going to go to a funeral. Is that what you want? So you call up the funeral parlors, and it's a state law that they have to tell you what they charge, and charge over the phone, and go through the whole thing and go through everything. And then you make a list of what you want paid for. And then you give it to your family. If you don't, it's going to be a mess. I belong to the Funeral Consumer Information Society of Westchester Incorporated. So write it down, how much you want to pay. And don't get ripped off, unless you want to be. Your poor people that you've left, they won't know what to do. And then they'll get suckered because they'll think that they're not treating you with respect. How much do you want to pay for a funeral? Call up and get the prices, write them down on a piece of paper, and leave it with your people. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here is Gene Crescenzi, and he wants to talk to you about the election fraud. Hello, Gene.
Yes, good morning. Well, now the failure of the hoax has now been, of the hope we all knew going back to the day one of the putting together of the Constitution and the so-called United States, that democracy was a fantasy that could not.
Well, the videotape ran out just as Crescenzi started speaking. So I'll have to call him up someday and do that one over. And Franklin served Jackson. He served the 33 sets. And he sent the money in for the civil recall, Lake Failure, on Long Island. The seatbelt hoax. Just like Scarsdale, seatbelt trap. And he got me some candy, but it wasn't hard candy, it was chocolate. Everything's chocolate. Tired of everything chocolate. And so I was going down the street alongside the A&P, and a man across the street hollered over and says, "Where you going?" And I greeted him with friendliness, and I said, "Well, who are you?" And he says, "I'm Judge Scarpino." So I went across the street, and we talked and talked and talked and talked. He told me I was right to go after de Blasi, and that de Blasi got dismissed from the contract cases because of the going to Connecticut Broadcasting School instead of going to court, the one I just told you about. And I asked how Mary Smith was, and he said fine. And I asked how LaCava was, and he's fine. And he says Gil Rabin is a judicial hearing officer, and that he says he thinks this is Cowie's last year. It is. The year 2000 is Cowie's last year. And he says Nikolai's doing well, and I said that's a horrible job. And I asked him if he heard from Ingracia, and Ingracia called him up and congratulated him. Anthony Scarpino won the surrogates court. He got it away from Emanuele. He got it away from the Republicans. I asked him how Andy Spano was doing, and Jameson, he says, wants to run for Supreme Court. She's in family court now. And he told me that he was in matrimonial part, and he said, "Oh, that's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing." It is. The way they fight over the children, and the poor children, are families splitting up. Oh, that's an awful thing. That's just disgusting. He said, I asked him how Fred Shapiro was, and he says Shapiro's getting out of matrimonial. He said he couldn't send his daughters to Mount Vernon High School, and I told him about the security. At Mount Vernon High School, and how horrible it is, how much fun it used to be in high school. It was all laughs, you didn't have a care in the world, and all you did is had good times. And it isn't like that anymore. And he said something about that's Farrakhan's outfit that has the security. He lives in North Castle now. He asked me where the program was videotaped, and I said it's videotaped at home. He says, yeah, I see it. He says, there's a lot of colors. Right. I said, but I edit it at Lynbrook in Long Island, Cablevision. And I wanted to know whom I was going after now, and I said, well, the most recent one. was, and he says Shapiro's getting out of matrimonial. He said he couldn't send his daughters to Mount Vernon High School, and I told him about the security. At Mount Vernon High School and how horrible it is, how much fun it used to be in high school. It was all laughs, you didn't have a care in the world, and all you did is had good times. And it isn't like that anymore. And he said something about that's Farrakhan's outfit that has the security. He lives in North Castle now. He asked me where the program was videotaped, and I said it's videotaped at home. He says, yeah, I see it. He says, it's a lot of colors. Right. I said, but I edit it at Lynbrook in Long Island, Cablevision. And I wanted to know whom I was going after now, and I said, well, the most recent one is just served now is a United States District Judge in St. Louis. And he says, St. Louis? He says, you're branched out all over the place. And I said, well, you know, de Blasio tried to get an order that Glendora couldn't file a case in the Supreme Court. And I said, so that gives me the perfect excuse. Not that the order has any standing. Then I told him how I beat the New York City parking violation civil recall. And he kept wanting to go and wanting to go and wanting to go. And I said, are you giving lectures to jurors anymore about Mount Vernon and the Bill of Rights and the Zenger trial? Free speech trial. He says, that's a good place. Have you been there? I said, oh, yes, years ago. And he says, it's really interesting. And he says, well, how'd you know? I said, I was there. The jury was discharged, the case was settled, and you made the jury sit there and listen to Mount Vernon about the Bill of Rights and the Zenger trial. He grew up in Mount Vernon. As I was talking to him, one of his school buddies went by many years ago. Franklin said, Daddy was a teacher of mathematics in Mount Vernon High School. In what year, Franklin? And the temperature's pretty good. In 1908 and 1909, they used to say. And the principal was A.B. Davis, and the name of the school now is A.B. Davis. And what else? He spoke of what a nice section this is. And I told him there's only one house in the whole area that isn't kept up, and that's the house that's owned by William Brown. He says, William Brown, William Brown. I says, William Brown was a White Plains common councilman, and he ran for mayor against Delfino, and Delfino won. He says, oh yeah, now I know who William Brown is. Well, he owns a house across the street, and he's letting it fall apart, and it's the only one in the whole area that isn't kept up. Yeah, so it was quite a long talk on the sidewalk with Scarpino. Although he lives in North Castle, he comes back here and does everything. He does his shopping back here. He was going to the cobbler this afternoon. So I have some jokes for you. I came home and I read all the flyers, the Home Depot and Seatown and Associated Grocers and Met Foods. I don't go to those stores. Seatown is where I order my groceries from. So, we have jokes for you. Paul said that our form of business had nothing to do with football, but it ended up in the hands of a receiver. And work is really important. If it weren't for work, where would the Dolans and the Cablevision officers and board rest up after a vacation? And is the boss all business, Ted said? Oh yes, he said, I saw him out on the beach and he was wearing a three-piece pinstripe bathing suit. And you knew that the toy business is returning to simple toys, that rubber balls are bouncing back, and kite sales are soaring high, and even boomerangs are showing a comeback. And the executive was interviewing Annette, and he said to her, "Your birthday is March the 17th, and she said, "Yes." And he said, "What year?" She said, "Every year." And Bill said, "I can't say how our company is doing." He says, "But at the last annual meeting, they played taps." And Paul said that his company, he said he walked into the company, he asked for change for a $50 bill, and they made him a partner. Resumes. No. The teacher said to the third graders, "If you take 51% away from 100%, what do you got?" And the little Dolan grandchild said, "Control of the company." Creative writing is something that you occasionally see in magazines, but you're certain to see it on resumes. And do you know what an efficiency expert is? That's somebody who tells you how to run your company. An efficiency expert is somebody who tells you how to run your company, and he's not smart enough to own his own. And Ed says that my son is a born executive. He's only 3 years old, and he already takes 3 hours to eat lunch. And Paul says, we cut corners in our office. He says some offices have an Apple computer, and ours is a lemon. So I think that's all of the news up to date. This is on November the Saturday after Thanksgiving, the 25th, Anno Domini, and the time is 3:30 p.m. And now Franklin and I have to go out, and we have to wash the 1993 Lincoln. First we'll wash it inside, then we'll wash it outside, and then we'll wash the windows. It's a much easier car to wash than the handsome 1980 Lincoln, which looks so beautiful after it was washed yesterday. It looks better than anything that sits on the showroom floors. Good morning, folks. I got up at 3:15 this morning. It's now 10 minutes after 4, and everything got done yesterday except 2 things: the telephoning, which hasn't been done for weeks, and the videotaping. And since we have to leave at 7:30 for Lindbergh to edit, the videotaping has to be done. Okay. Here are some jokes for you. Bill said, "My former business had nothing to do with football, but it ended up in the hands of a receiver." And work is really important. If it weren't for work, where would the Dolans rest up after all of their vacations? You'll see that, you'll have personal knowledge of that this morning when you hear how many people were absent yesterday. Is the boss all business? Yes. I saw him on the beach last summer, and he was wearing a 3-piece pinstripe bathing suit. And the toy business is returning to simple toys. Rubber balls are bouncing back. Kite sales are soaring high. And even boomerangs are making a comeback. the executive was interviewing Annette, and he says, I see that your birthday is March the 17th. And she says, that's right. And he said, what year? And she said, every year. And Terry said about his company, we'd make a change in management, but we can't figure out who's running the company now. And creative writing is something you occasionally find in magazines, but you'll always find it on resumes. And Steve says, I won't tell you how badly the company is doing, but at the last shareholders meeting, they played taps. And Bill says, I walked into the place and asked for change for a $50 bill, and they made me a partner. Mrs. Morgan asked the fifth grader, if you take 51% from 100%, what do you have? And the Dolan grandchild said, control of the company. Do you know what an efficiency expert is? That is somebody who tells you how to run your business, but isn't smart enough to have his own. And John said, my son is a born executive. He's only 5, and already he takes 3 hours to eat his lunch. And Paul says, we always try to cut corners around our office. He says, most offices have Apple computers. He says, but ours is a lemon. We got many things going on here with Dolan's. But first of all, I want to discuss with you the very sad tale of Janine Papero. This is a portrait of Dorian Gray. He used to be so handsome. Now, if Albert Pirro is guilty, okay, that is bad, very bad. But knowing how bad U.S. attorneys are, and the whole Department of Justice, or Injustice, how bad it is, I just have a feeling that he was framed. And it says, White Plains, November 1st, 4 months after being convicted of conspiracy and tax evasion, Albert J. Pirro Jr., the influential Republican businessman and husband of Westchester County top prosecutor, the district attorney of Westchester County, Janine Pirro, was sentenced today to 29 months in a federal prison, concluding a trial that put the Pirro's lavish lifestyle on display. Knowing how U.S. attorneys lie and how they misrepresent, I think I'm wondering if the guilty ones aren't the U.S. attorneys. The sentence rendered by Judge Barrington D. Parker, Jr., and I have personal knowledge that that man is not moral. In Glendora versus Hofstadter, he came out and he clearly said that public access is first come, first serve. And the case was taking A Chat with Glendora off of TV and putting a new program on every other week in its place. And that is not first come, first serve. when Chatwas Glendora had been there for years. So I know Barrington D. Parker, Jr. to be a bad person. The sentence rendered by Judge Barrington D. Parker, Jr. was less than the 33 months that prosecutors had sought, offering some solace to Mr. Pirro, his family, and the packed gallery of supporters who attended today's proceeding. I did not go. November 1st, I was fighting Cablevision and Charles Dolan, another person who has broken the law lavishly. And when I corner him in court, he just pays the judge or pays the party. He pays the political machine. Yet for all of the moving testimonials from Mr. Pirro's friends and colleagues about his character and kindness, Judge Parker said that in the end, Mr. Pirro could only blame himself for improperly deducting $1.2 million of his personal expenses as business write-offs. Quote, in mad pursuit of some American dream with the cars, the vacation homes, the paintings. Who is Judge Parker to talk? He sold his soul long ago. And Gene Krasinski reports that a person he knows went to Washington, D.C., to the Judicial Conference of the United States to look at the disclosure statement of some judges. And the Judge Guido Calabrese, who let Bruiser Ken and crooked U.S. Attorney Edgardo Ramos and 64 other conspirators get away with a betrayal to the United States of America and everything that you hold patriotic. This Judge Calabrese, this man found out in Washington, D.C., had put down that he was worth $36 million. How do you get that rich as a judge? You sell decisions. So this is why I suspect that Parker's decision is doing maybe the same things that Pirro allegedly did, and that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had put down on her disclosure statement that she had $23 million in assets. You see why you don't count for anything? You see why when you go before judges, I've told you before, long before you went before that judge has sold his soul. He sold America. He sold his soul. He sold all that we believe in. He sold it. So judges are have the same proclivities as Parker is saying Pirro had. It was an assessment that Mr. Pirro and did not contest. It was an assessment that Mr. Pirro did not contest. Instead, Mr. Pirro, who had been a formidable Republican lobbyist and one of Westchester's top real estate lawyers, told the court in a 3-minute speech that he accepted responsibility for his actions He said that he wanted to apologize to his friends, his fellow lawyers, and most of all, his wife, Janine F. Pirro, the district attorney. Well, behind all that is what? If you get down on your knees and grovel and give up your independence for the U.S. attorney in front of the judge, then the judge is going to give you a few less months in prison. Now that's what they tried to do to Franklin and me. I don't know if Mr. Pirro is guilty or not. I know that Franklin and Glendora were not guilty, and I know that the U.S. attorney made up a story and said we were guilty and has told 4,100 lies. And I know that the U.S. attorney tried to get us to say that we were guilty of something that we didn't do. It was Bruiser Ken who had beat us up so badly, who had beaten us up so badly, and they tried to make us say that we attacked him, when all Franklin did was to extend his arms between Bruiser Ken and myself to protect Franklin's wife, myself, from the blows of Bruiser Ken. And they tried to get us to say that we attacked him and that we were guilty and that we were had compunction. They tried everything they could to do that. We would not do what Pirro did. We would not buckle to it. We stood up for what was true, and we stood up for what was right, and we weren't going to buckle and trade off. Now, maybe that's the difference between being guilty and not being guilty. If you're not guilty, you have that strength to do that. You have that strength to stand on your 2 feet and stand up for the truth no matter what. If you're guilty, you've lost your confidence, you've lost your standing in your own mind and with all the people who know you. Mrs. Pirro had been viewed as a strong Republican contender for United States Senator or Governor until her husband was indicted. In a strong, steady voice, Mr. Pirro said, "I clearly did not fulfill my responsibilities to make a diligent enough effort to disclose my tax returns. To my wife, Janine, I would like to publicly apologize for the difficulties which I have imposed upon her in carrying out her professional aspirations, as well as tarnishing her stellar record." Well, I know Janine, and Janine and I were pretty close friends until she got to be district attorney, and then she stopped returning my calls, and she stopped seeing, and so I told Janine that I was reporting all this on public access television, and Janine finally did see us, Franklin and Glendora, and we had a good talk, and we had a lot of laughs the way we did in the old days. But then she intimated when I complained to her, about her discarding of friends now that she was district attorney, she says, "Well, isn't that natural? As you go up, she was saying in so many words, as you go up the ladder, you drop your old friends." Well, this old friend wasn't there to support her. Under the original federal sentencing guidelines, Mr. Pirro could have faced 32 to 46 months in prison. But by agreement with prosecutors, you see, this is plea bargaining, selling, buying and selling. He received a lower sentence because he had waived his right to appeal. See that? Isn't that awful? How anti-American can you get? Just tell me, folks, how anti-American can you get? Make a person waive his right to appeal, sell his right. That's not our world. You remember Edgardo Ramos saying, "We'll let Franklin go if Glendora pleads guilty"? Preposterous. Outrageous. Partly because of what he said were the long odds of winning. Pirro said he wouldn't win the appeal. And partly, according to friends, because of the case's financial and emotional toll on his family. Well, Mr. Pirro was wrong, of course, not to go pro se. Mr. Pirro is not expected to surrender, is now expected to surrender to federal authorities. They aren't authorities. They've robbed the authority. You are the authority. To federal authorities on January 9th. He will serve his sentence in the minimum security federal prison camp at Eglin Air Force Base in Eglin, Florida, which has a tennis court and a secluded bay inlet for sunbathing. If he behaves well, he could possibly be released in 2 years or less. He had requested that prison because his family has a vacation home in Florida. With Mr. Pirro poised to exchange his pinstripe suits for prison garb, most of the headlines with the name Pirro will no doubt swirl around the personal, financial, and political fortunes of his wife. Today, after the sentencing, Mrs. Pirro, who noted that she and her husband just celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary, made a few comments to reporters. Quote, "This has been a terrible ordeal for my family, my children," said Mrs. Pirro, squinting in the face of a bright midday sun. This, of course, all happened down at the 6 floors of Injustice, 300 Quaropas Street in White Plains, where I've shown you many, many, many injustices, many, many crooked judges, many, many, many souls sold. Then asked whether she would remain district attorney or opt, as some friends have urged, for a more lucrative job in private practice, now that her family will depend more on her government salary, she said, "It's a job that I love and I intend to stay district attorney." She is up for re-election in 2001. How much money did she make a year? I would judge around $130,000, $140,000 a year of your money. And of course, the district attorney of the county of Westchester, just like the district attorney of the county of Nassau, they're anything but pure. They probably framed dozens of people themselves. I've said before that I think the district attorney should sue the U.S. attorney for civil RICO, for frame-up. During the 5-week trial, government prosecutors, this is the crooked U.S. attorneys, referred to thousands of pages of tax returns, invoices, and canceled checks in presenting their portrait of Albert Pirro as a wealthy man who decided to cheat on his taxes to become wealthier. Nobody can cheat more than U.S. attorneys. I have personal knowledge. And in so doing, they uncorked intimate details about the Pirros' private lives and spending habits on airplane tickets, country club outings, fine art, classic cars, and more. And where does the U.S. Attorney get this information? They hire little flunkies, $200 a week, $300 a week, or they take interns out of law school who don't get anything to research this, and then they corrupt these youths. Albert Pirro's legal team, in turn, argue that Mr. Pirro on mundane bookkeeping details, and that his high-ticket expenses were routine for someone who counts Governor George E. Pataki and Donald J. Trump as friends. Besides, Mr. Pirro's lawyers noted Mr. Pirro had repaid about $1 million in back taxes. Well, you see, that's the attitude that Janine had toward us. That we were routine for someone and that she was high ticket. Yeah, that's the same attitude that Janine said. Maybe that wasn't Janine's real personality. Maybe that was her husband's. Throughout the trial, Mrs. Pirro was a frequent visitor to the courtroom in United States District Court for the Southern District, occupying a front row gallery seat. And though she was not charged with any wrongdoing, she was constantly subjected to insinuations that she should have known more. Indeed, it was easy sometimes to forget that Mr. Pirro's younger brother, an accountant, Anthony G. Pirro, was also on trial on similar charges. Neither Pirro brother testified. The defense called no witnesses at all, confident that the government failed to meet its burden of proof. But you see, they failed to meet the burden of proof in the case of Franklin and Glendora, but they intimidated jury. And jurors don't go in there, they go in and they save their souls. they save their skin, I should say. They sell their souls and save their skin. And the U.S. attorney intimidates them. And this is why, in these cases, the U.S. attorneys usually get convictions. It's really stolen. They don't. The people on trial don't get justice. But the defense guessed wrong. On June 22, a jury convicted Albert Pirro on all 34 counts, and Anthony Pirro on 23 out of 33. See, that's the way they do it. The U.S. attorneys are interested only in convictions. They aren't interested in America. Anthony Pirro was sentenced today to 37 months. That's the brother, the lowest level possible, but plans to appeal. And his lawyer, Roger L. Stavis, said his lawyer, a prior conviction for cocaine possession was a factor in the longer sentence. In meting out his sentence today, Judge Parker, who also ordered Albert Pirro to pay $62,466 in lawyer's fees. You think the lawyers are innocent? You think Parker is innocent? They're a long stretch from being pure Snow White. Parker said that he was impressed by how Albert Pirro had managed to overcome humble origins to succeed in life and had won over so many people of high stations and low with his generosity, if anything, he almost sounded disappointed in Mr. Pirro, noting that of all the letters that were submitted to the court in defense of his character, not one talked about the trappings of wealth. What's the point? Do you understand the point? Whatever it is, who is Parker to say? Parker is the man who went back on his word, and I have personal knowledge of that. Who is Parker to say? Quote, "You somehow lost your bearings," said Parker, "and you lost your perspective." Same thing that Parker did. He lost his bearings and he lost his perspective when he knew that the law said public access is first come, first serve. And he didn't punish Hofstadter gang, Continental, up in Ossining for what they did. And Parker says, "I sense that's what led you to cheat on your taxes." What led Parker to cheat on Congress's statutes and on the statutes of the state legislature of New York? What led Parker to cheat? Judge Parker said, quote, "The things that you worked so hard to buy were the things that your friends really don't care about." Who is Parker to talk? Who is Parker to lecture? Who is Parker to call the kettle black? The pot calling the kettle black. It's a very sad story. Now we have another one. Let me just mention these to you. This is an old newspaper clipping, and you see what it says. It's 4:41 a.m. on Tuesday morning, November the 28th. It says 2 cable TV companies agreed to $345,000 in rebates and refunds. These cable TV companies, one of them is the one that I sued for taking a chat with Glendora off and putting on a new program every other week. That would be Continental Cable TV, owned by Hofstadter, and then he sold it to Media One, and then Media One lost it. That would be, Media One would be the telephone company. U.S. West, was that the name of it? U.S. West. That was run by, gee, it's so long ago. Anyway, the CEO lost everything. He lost the whole company. When he bought Media One, and now Media One is in the hands of AT&T. So they lost everything. It would be Charles Lillis and Richard what was his last name? And Hofstadter. They've lost it all. Anyhow, these 2 TV cable companies, $345,000 in rebates and refunds. Cable television subscribers, we got to do this with Cablevision. In 31 municipalities in Westchester and Putnam counties are due refunds and rebates with an estimated value of $345,000 in a settlement of complaints before the Federal Communications Commission. 2 cable companies are affected by the settlement: Continental Cablevision and TCI Cable of Westchester. Well, they're no more. They're gone. They were bought by Cablevision, and John Malone is out of the business. And all those crooked people. Their lawyers, Ben Wiles and Joshua Koenig and Paul Rapp, all of those crooks are gone now. They've lost everything. Here's another one I want to point out to you. A Larchmont man named for federal judgeship. A Larchmont man seems to be headed for a federal judgeship. The Senate Judiciary Committee heard praise today, Tuesday, for Jed S. Rakoff, 52, whom President Clinton has nominated to be a judge in New York's Southern District. I wished I was there. I wish I was there. They would not have got praise from me for Jed Rakoff. Jed Rakoff is the guy who robbed system-wide public access in Westchester. This crook TCI and John Malone that I just told you about took away system-wide public access from 160 public access producers on May the 1st, 1996. And these 22 communities, excepting Pelham and New Rochelle, 22 communities are in the Dark Ages, are medieval. And James Dolan and Charles F. Dolan will not do a thing about that. So here's a whole bunch of crooks. Don't believe any of them. Probably here's another one. You can't believe that there are any courts left. When you go to court, folks, these courts, before you long get there, have been sold. They are the people's courts, but they're sold. They're sold long before you get there, the people's courts. They have been stolen from you. So, this is Pataki selects judge for the appeals court he sees as lenient. They're all crooks. I've never met a judge yet that wasn't a crook, that hadn't sold his oath to support the Constitution of the United States. I have never met one yet. And I've been deep within the court since, I would say, 1989, 1990, a decade. Now we have the matter of the law-breaking of Charles F. Dolan, chairman of Cablevision Systems Corporation, 1111 Stewart Avenue, Bethpage, New York, 11714. Glendora writes, This is Glendora's request to see the shareholder ledger pursuant to Delaware law of corporations, Section 219. Shareholder ledger shall be available 10 days before the shareholder meeting. The meeting is December the 8th, 2000. That's a week from this coming Friday. Glendora's purpose, germane to the December 8th meeting, is to write to shareholders and tell them not to vote for proposal A, it is a monstrosity, nor for B, nor for C. And proposal A is the tracking stock. They want to take our Cablevision stock and they want to call it Cablevision Group New York stock. And they want to track the Rainbow Media sales. So they want to, and it's also complicated and it's also garbled. And that's another story how I'm ever going to explain that to you. And that was item 1. Here's item 2. Also today, your 5 days are up since the November 21st demand pursuant to Delaware law of corporations, Section 220, to see the shareholder list, books, and records. To have my agent see the same in my behalf and to have us both make copies. That was the demand that was delivered a week ago today. They've had their 5 days. Third, our September 26th demand pursuant to Foreign Corporations New York State Business Corporation Law, Section 1315, to see the shareholder list, to have Franklin, on behalf of Glendora, see it, and to make copies. You have still not complied with. Fourth, you have not fulfilled this shareholder's request to send her copies of the bylaws, the certificate of incorporation, the certificate of authority for New York, the certificate of authority for Delaware, and the minutes of the D-Day annual meeting. Fifth, your people still have not corrected the mistake in Glendora's address on the shareholders list. Wrong is Glendora, 1315 New York Avenue. Hold the phone. This is an incomplete copy. This is the Cablevision shareholder file. This is a monstrosity of Dolan cheating. And there's a man who must be stopped from breaking the law. I try to do it, and I've spent all my money, all my resources trying to do it. And I bring him to court, and it's obvious that he's broken the law. But what happens?